Hello, and welcome back to Roslyn. This is episode 10, which is very exciting. Although, I'll be honest with you, this episode isn't particularly exciting. So, here we are back at the farmer's market we built last episode, and this is actually footage from that same build session. Um, but after the farmer's market, I felt like it was much less focused, so I just broke it off into its own tiny episode. But since it's episode 10, I think it's a good chance to take a little retrospective of the city. We also are going to do some work on our high school campus and start to lay out some beachfront real estate. Um, but those are going to be works in progress, nothing quite as refined as our farmer's market from last episode here turned out. Um, so, I'm really happy with how this turned out, I'll be honest with you. Um, I think the farmer's market came together really nicely. But let's see what else we've got. So we were doing some residential development over here. It looks like that's filling in nicely. We still have a lot of residential demand, which is why we're going to start looking down here past the high school. To the east, as I've marked on the map there handily with one of the districts, just to give me a sense of orientation. The easiest way to do that is just to turn the day-night cycle on and watch where the sun rises on your map and put a little spot down over there to remind yourself. So yes, we're just building out classic 7D blocks, trying to make sure we're coming from the right direction so our grid is all squared up. Um, And we're just leaving those cul-de-sacs for now, because obviously there's some terrain there I'm going to want to work around eventually. And here I can take a look at it. So obviously the beach slopes down quite a bit through the forest there. And then there's that hill to the side. I guess that would be the south side there. That complicates the terrain a little bit. But this is a pretty far drop. It's not terribly steep, but we're not going to see a road built down on that beach. And so here I'm just going to throw down planning road. I'm going to try to keep all of the original rock features. I think those are really nice to have. That lined up nicely with that big road we brought down here. And I think that's just like a nice beachfront road. I mean, we're going to want to see all of this real estate developed eventually. So having a road down here right now is a good play. And then just playing around with some of the travel and leisure to get a rough sense of what could be here on the beach eventually. I'll be honest with you, on Vanilla Console, a lot of these assets are problematic, in the sense that without Move It, the mod, and the ability to really, oh, here I get distracted. So this is not live commentary again. This is me doing some voiceover after the fact, because I did not record this with live commentary. But I just wanted to throw a riding stable down as a part of our farm there. I feel like that's always a good place for it. And it does sort of mix up the use of the farmland in a sense. And if you have a lot of residential area that's serving your farm with workers, throwing down a riding stable is a good way to boost some land value around those homes. Seems I got a little distracted here thinking about what I wanted to do for some leisure up there, but really, the whole point of developing this beachfront area is to bring the entire city a new sort of leisurely, place to come. So we're just drawing in the grid. Gonna keep our 70 blocks working through here. Just pull these over as far as we can for now. Because they're not going to be, we're going to want to leave some space by the coast there to do something special eventually, I think. But we'll try to take the most of the space we do have right now. And then what I really want to do over here is turn this sort of spot under the hill into a big public feature. That is going to be like a major draw for this entire area. You know, I'm thinking a library might be what I end up going with here. That's in a future episode, I believe. We're not going to get to that today. This is just some basic layout. And so then, of course, we're going to want to do pedestrian access on the beach here. It's a bit silly throwing down these like dirt or gravel paths on a beach. And I don't know that we'll see it on a pedestrian access. Actually, utilization, I should say. Obviously, we're building in plenty of access, but whether or not anybody's going to take us up on it, we'll have to wait and see. You know, I think maybe eventually it'd be nice to come back through here and instead of this, do like a boardwalk or something like that, because when you pop this dirt path up off the ground, it gives you a nice wooden look. So we could do a boardwalk, maybe still have some paths leading down to the beach itself. That way, it makes a little more sense instead of just having this random dirt path across the beach where people would just walk if they actually used the beaches and city skylines. But I don't think I've ever seen a swimmer on the beach, so I'm not sure that's possible. So just contemplating the next move here. You know, I think figuring out a neighborhood like this, it can be, you can get up in your own head about it to your own detriment, I think, sometimes. You know, I really want the space to feel special because it is in the heart of this sort of palm woods that breaks into the beach here. You know, I think this would be a really magical part of the city, honestly. Like, you come in off the interstate through the mountains there, you come through this, you know, bustling small town with all the factories and the plazas, the shops, and just row after row of these houses. And you know, then you hit this like very heavily wooded part of the city, and all of a sudden, you know, you come out of this very dense, lush, vegetative area, and you're at the beach. You know, if you've ever been to a beach where it's like you have to walk through the woods to get there, I think it's just such a, whether it's a lake or a bay or the ocean, I think it's such like a fascinating, beautiful transition between natural settings, I guess is how I would put it. Anyway, so just figuring out our fencing here, trying to decide if that's going to be a little one by or if we want to leave room to expand this road, which I think we do, because that is Spring Street. That's one of our major crosstowns. Sort of a secondary, I guess, a mid-major crosstown. Here I'm realizing I want to go and start spacing these lots. Oh, actually, this might be me just backing this off entirely, because I decided I wanted to leave another block for the high school campus here. Because realistically, like one school building and a couple tennis courts, I don't think is going to cut it. So we'll play around with that high school campus development here, I think. In the meantime, just trying to keep up with some residential demand before it totally takes over. So throwing in our water pipes here, staying predominantly under the roads, but in some of these spots it would be cheaper to just make a cut across if there's not going to be anything in there for the time being. I mean, you might get upset later, but it's going to be cheaper to service that pipe if it's not under the road, if it doesn't have to be. So here we're discovering I don't have enough money for this gym, which is a total staple of my high school campuses. I love to put this gymnasium in there. It feels like, you know, where you'd have the basketball team play their games. So just trying to figure out the layout of it here while Um, Also planning for a pool, which we can't afford. So, I think because it's a tropical map, I don't know if it's out of the question for a high school to have an outdoor pool. I don't know if it would be year round, but I think it's a nice thing to have. And we're going to put a senior citizen center down here, um, which I think is a really nice spot for it because, hopefully this is going to be a little commercial hub down here. There's going to be a library. There's the beach to take some nice walks, maybe eventually some paths through these woods, even eventually, to connect up with some other neighborhoods. So I think this would be a really nice spot for an amenity like this. We're just going to drag that. So I think that should link up to the back of that now, because I think that asset, even in Vanilla Console, has that capacity. So it just kind of widens the sidewalk back there too. It's a nice touch, adds some extra lighting. So we can start zoning here, maybe? Except those don't have back walls, so I better be careful with that. Yep, figured it out. I think eventually I will want to come back through here and really add in some more vegetation, because I know that these houses, these zoned lots, are going to affect a lot of it. You can see the fencing already has, I think. So just making some pedestrian cut-throughs right there. It makes sense. We already have crosswalks at that intersection, but just getting lights on the side of the path that I want them on instead of where they were. Widen the sidewalk there. I think that's a nice touch. Oop, but I'm not happy with how it looks. It's tough sometimes with the sidewalks. You'd really love it. I would really love it if it would just expand the existing sidewalk, right? That would be perfect, but sometimes it wants to put those little dirty spots, which isn't necessarily unrealistic to have a little busted up sidewalk, but we're just saving space there for that gym eventually. And trying to decide if this is going to be a kind of part of town that might have a yoga garden near their high school somewhere. Ultimately, I don't think I found a spot for it that I liked. May come back to that. That might be nice, something to have in the woods. Back where we don't quite have that square yet. Could easily throw a yoga garden down in there. Here you can see our residential demand is sort of leveling out with commercial demand. So just to stay ahead of that, I'm going to add in some more commercial zoning. Just a couple little squares here and there, right around an existing node. That's a pretty major set of intersections right there. Right around this triangle right here, that'd be a good place for a shop. Looking right out there, eventually you could throw some picnic tables right out there across the street. And just historicizing the first one of those to pop up, because we don't want those to get too tall. That's always the trick. It's easy to want to just throw down commercial zoning and then go back to whatever I was doing, but actually paying attention and historicizing things is going to make a difference long term, because it's going to keep our city low profiled, as opposed to letting it just sort of... The commercial buildings in particular, I think, they get too big. They just get way too big for like neighborhoods of single family homes. At least if we're looking for like a sort of US city profile. I guess I'll qualify it that way too. My opinion, just my opinion. So, grain of salt and all that, but I think in particular on Roslyn here, I'm looking right now just for a very low build, because until we can get the high density residential development access and we will historicize. I will historicize a lot of those as well, to sort of keep them low profile. And we'll get to that eventually, I think. But for now, just to say that um, it's a high priority for me to keep the commercial buildings fairly low profile in terms of just their height and the skyline. So here I'm deciding, actually would like to have a pedestrian path through here, and the big bite might have to go to make it happen. Which, you know, not the most realistic, but personally I never feel bad about demolishing a growable like that, if I'm being real. Um, Another big bite will pop right up in no time. Now, if it was actually like a nice historic looking commercial site, then yeah, I would be bummed. And I like to add some fencing in here around the skate park, which I believe we moved when we redid the farmer's market. Just trying to level that out a tiny bit so that fence point doesn't sag down there. But I think realizing that the road is in the way of that happening, so that looks a lot better already. That's the thing about vanilla consoles. When you have the road there, the road is not going to move. You can move the dirt around the road, and we might actually get into some ways to play with that as the city does start to go vertical. But you have to get rid of the road to truly level a spot. That's one of the first things I had to learn the hard way on vanilla console. So some in-demand real estate here for commercial development. Sort of becoming a really second kind of downtown almost. I believe that's Valley View and Grove Streets. That's kind of between there, which is a major up-down, probably east-west streets, compared to most of our residential here is on these north-south blocks. Yeah, you could just see there the district. I pulled up the east arrow, so it's not quite, they're not exactly east-west. They're more of sort of southeast-northwest. Or, sorry, is that right? Yeah, that's right. But here we are. You can already see I have a park district down on the beach, because I know that's what I want that to be. And I'm going to go ahead and zone that tourism. And we're going to call it beach for now. So, not a lot of flavor to it just yet, but it's there, it's down, that's great. You know, I think I'm going to probably try to get some of the nice beachfront tourism, because you can get those little tables on the patios, I think. We're going to try. We'll get there. We'll probably do a whole episode on the beach eventually, kind of like we did with the farmer's market. But for now, you can see my residential demand is way back up. So we're just going to fence in some more. Everybody's favorite part of Roslyn, the fencing. Not super exciting, and you know, I am hopeful that as I continue to develop my editing skills, there's the potential for me to maybe start to fast forward some of the fencing. We'll see. I think it would be beneficial, because this is really going to be a staple of the series long term. I'm I mean, obviously, um, we'll see. Maybe once I unlock the high density residential, we'll really play around with the urbanity of it all, but I would imagine I'm not going to give up the fencing entirely. It's just going to be incorporated differently, I think. Who knows? Maybe not even that differently, honestly, for some of it. Um, I think it's just going to depend on how I want to develop a sort of really urbanized core to sort of the south here on all of that open real estate. And residential demand is still just very high, so I'm just going to add in a bunch of houses down here, put a little shop right next to that. And I think I'm about to realize that the terrain down here is not exactly what I thought it was. Almost forgot to widen that road. Yep, and there's a big shop just popped in right there. And then obviously want to upgrade this road. And especially now that we can pick the trees, I can pick the trees that go on that beachfront road there. That's going to be really nice. It would be tempting to put in a major road there, and I did think about putting the sort of medium-sized road that is actually still just a two-lane avenue, but it would have really messed with all of my paths, and I may have had to rework it around that rock right there, so I'm going to hold off on that for now. Although if those paths do come back out anyway and turn into a boardwalk, who knows what will happen down here. Yeah, there's that terrain issue, which I'm like, can I live with it? Can I? Can I live with it? Because I'll tell you, being out where I'm at now, my new city is it's hilly in a way that I haven't seen in a long time. But I think there was a picnic table on the hill there. It's one thing to ask a car to go up a ridiculous hill. It's another thing to ask somebody to sit there and eat their lunch at a 45-degree angle. So we were able to quell a lot of that residential demand, and commercial popped right back up. I am just going to try and go through and check and make sure I historicized a lot of these new ones. Um, Classic, we got a bookstore. It is giving us a lot of the same here. I mean, that's the problem with the 2x2s. And really with when you do specific zoning sizes like that, you repeat them a lot, you're just going to see a lot of the same building. And I think the only way around that is to find the buildings that you don't mind seeing a lot of. And that can mean a couple of things. Either they are distinctive in a way that you like for your city, or they blend in. So yeah, we laid out this neighborhood here today, and I'm pretty happy with it, honestly. I think this beach, again, is going to be a major feature. Obviously, we have one of our biggest roads stretching from the interstate all the way down here. Um, so, it's primed to be a big deal, this area. I think it's just a matter of waiting to see what happens, honestly. Right now there's a lot of residential backed in here. Who knows what the future could hold? And hopefully we can bring the level of detail to it that we brought to this farmer's market last episode eventually. You could tell I'm really in love with this thing from the fact that we started this episode here and now we're back. But you can also see there the riding stable does add a really nice touch to the farm. I mean, the big thing is that it's just a couple of extra giant barns. Um, but I do like that. Um, Yeah, and so we can see really the city is taking some unique shape now here based on the geography, as it's sort of up against that bay right there. Um, there's a interesting sort of development pattern happening. Some of it's a little unusual. We may come to regret that, but still has the fundamental sort of nature of our same blocks, these same 2 by 3 lots. Um, just maybe it's too much. I don't know. You tell me what you think. Maybe it's time to mess around with some of the development patterns here before too long. Otherwise, the city could look extremely similar all the way through. Um, and maybe it needs a little more variety in lot sizing. So we'll come to that, I think. But as you can see, there's a lot of room to expand very naturally, I think. In both directions, honestly, which may be an asset because having all that industrial on the far side of town is going to make growth in my originally stated direction tricky to a certain extent, um, eventually. Just have to see what happens, I guess. I mean, look at this. This is what I've accomplished in 10 episodes right here. So I know the population's only around like 5,000, but I think it's been in a really intentional and deliberate 5,000, and I'm pretty proud of that. Um, and I hope you have enjoyed watching the build, watching along. Um, I should have a couple of more episodes up my sleeve already. I just need to check and make sure they have commentary and run them through some basic edits. And I think I'll have those cranked out here in the next couple of weeks. And then hopefully soon I'll get to start recording again, um, and continuing to build Roslyn. And as I settle into um, some changes in my life, we can continue to watch the city blossom. So thanks again for tuning in. This was kind of a short one, but those seem to perform better. So hope you enjoyed it. Thanks. Bye.